Welcome back to Secrets Exposed. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. You're the reason these stories worth sharing. Tell us where you're watching from, city or country. We're amazed by how far these tales reach. To get daily new and amazing stories for you, subscribe our channel and press bell icon. All right, let's begin. The rain came sideways, a cold mist needling Ethan Ward's face as the taxi rolled to a stop in front of the house. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not tonight, not for another 6 days. His suitcase was still half-zipped, a boarding pass stub tucked into his jacket pocket like unfinished business. But the last-minute flight cancellation had felt like an omen he couldn't name, and all the way from the airport, an unease had been sitting in his chest like a second heartbeat. The porch light was off. Lydia never left it off. Through the front window, he saw only the flicker of a television glow bouncing off the hallway wall. It was too quiet for a house that held a child. He lifted his hand to knock, then heard it, a voice low and harsh cutting through the rain. Another voice answered, smaller, trembling. He turned the handle, unlocked. Inside, the air carried that closed-up smell of detergent and fear. One lamp burned in the corner, throwing a wedge of light across the living room. Lydia stood near the wall in an oversized sweater, arms wrapped around herself. Across from her was a man Ethan didn't recognize at first glance. Broad-shouldered, mid-30s, wearing a shirt half-buttoned as if dressing had been interrupted. His tone dropped another octave, then stopped when he saw Ethan. And behind the armchair, barely visible, was Jason, 8 years old, curled in on himself like someone hiding from thunder. For a heartbeat, nobody spoke. The rain on the windows filled the silence. Mark. Ethan caught the name from Lydia's startled whisper, set something down on the coffee table, a length of black cable coiled neatly as though he'd just unplugged it. Didn't expect company, he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Ethan's own voice came out steady. Clearly, he crouched beside his son. Hey buddy, you okay? Jason nodded too quickly, the way kids do when they've learned that honesty brings trouble. His breathing hitched once before settling into short, sharp bursts. Ethan's gaze swept over him. Hair mussed, sleeve torn at the cuff, a faint discoloration where a cord might have rested. His stomach knotted. Lydia stepped forward. Ethan, please. It's not. It looks worse than it is. He was acting out. Mark was trying to help. Her words tripped over each other like stones falling downhill. Help! Ethan echoed. The room seemed to tilt. This is help. Mark crossed his arms, trying on authority. The boy needs discipline. Structure. You're never here to give it, are you? Jason flinched at the word discipline. His small fingers tightened around the armchair fabric. Ethan turned his attention back to him. What happened, Jason? The child's voice was barely audible. He says it's called respect, and that you're just a paycheck, not a protector. Each word landed heavier than the last. Lydia's face drained of color. Jason, she started, but stopped, as if the air had been pulled from her throat. Mark chuckled under his breath. Kids repeat things they don't understand. Ethan stood slowly. Maybe you should explain it then. No one moved. The television flicker died out. A cartoon character froze mid-smile. The only sound was rain and the thin whir of the ceiling fan. Ethan's calm was deliberate, sculpted. Rage lived behind it, pacing. He scanned the room again. The router light off, the teddy bear camera on the shelf turned toward the wall instead of the couch. His instincts stirred. Something had been staged here. He drew a slow breath. Jason, he said gently, go to your room. Close the door. The boy hesitated, then darted down the hall. The soft click of his door shutting echoed like a verdict. Now there were 3 of them. Lydia, shaking. Mark, smirking. And Ethan, suddenly certain that whatever this was, it had been going on longer than tonight. He took one step closer. You and I are going to talk, he said quietly. The thunder outside rolled through the sky like an answer. And for the first time that night, Mark's smile slipped. The lamp's glow barely reached the far wall, leaving the hallway swallowed in half-light. Ethan didn't move at first. He just listened. The house creaked, and underneath the creaks there was the quick rhythm of Jason's footsteps retreating down the corridor, a bedroom door easing shut. When the sound settled, Ethan finally faced the room. Mark broke the silence first. You don't have to make this a thing. The kid got mouthy. I told him to stand still. That's all. Lydia tried to nod, but couldn't finish the motion. Her hands were clasped so tight her knuckles had turned pale. Ethan's eyes went to the cable on the table again, neatly coiled, ends frayed from overuse. The detail lodged in his brain like a splinter. He remembered seeing a similar cord plugged into the old dehumidifier last month. That machine was gone now. He asked quietly, "Where's the rest of it?" Mark frowned. "What? The cord you cut that from?" Mark's shrug was meant to look careless, but the muscle in his jaw ticked once. Lydia's gaze darted to the hallway closet before she caught herself and looked down. Ethan noticed. He stepped closer to her instead of to Mark. "When did you meet him, Lydia?" The calm in his tone was almost gentle, but each syllable landed with weight. "You said it was only a few weeks." 2 months, she whispered. He helped fix the sink. Jason liked him at first. Her voice cracked on the last word. Mark's chuckle filled the pause. "I'm not on trial here." Ethan turned to him. "You might be surprised." The air thickened. Rain drummed on the windows like a ticking clock. Lydia moved toward the kitchen, muttering something about tea, about everyone needing to calm down. Ethan let her go. He wanted her out of the crossfire. Mark followed her with his eyes, then leaned back against the couch arm, confident again. "You show up unannounced, start throwing accusations. Maybe that's why your kid acts out. No rules." Ethan's phone buzzed, a corporate reminder from his missed flight. He silenced it without looking. "You think fear teaches respect?" he asked. Mark's smirk returned. "Sometimes it's the only thing that works." Ethan crossed the floor, slow, deliberate. He stopped only when the space between them was a breath. "Let me make something clear," he said. "If I ever hear you raise your voice at my son again, we'll have a problem you can't talk your way out of." Mark straightened, face tightening. "You threatening me in her house?" Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "I'm warning you at my son's home." The seconds stretched until Lydia came back with a trembling mug of tea that no one wanted. "Please," she said, setting it down too hard. "Not in front of Jason. He's in his room," Ethan said. Mark laughed once, short and sharp. "Probably crying. You should have seen him earlier, telling stories. That boy knows how to make people feel sorry for him." Ethan's breath caught. "Stories." Mark lifted his hands. "You think I'm stupid? He tells teachers you argue. He says you slam doors. He's been setting up a whole picture. Makes you look bad." Lydia's eyes widened, searching Ethan's face. "He said that." "He didn't," Ethan answered. "Someone told him to." For the first time, Mark looked uncertain. It was a flicker, gone in a blink, but Ethan saw it. "A tell. You want to know what I think?" Ethan said softly. "You've been coaching him." Mark barked a laugh, but it was too loud, too forced. "You're paranoid." Ethan stepped back, scanning the shelves. Something felt wrong. The teddy bear camera. It used to face the sofa. Now it pointed at the ceiling. "You touched that?" he asked. "Touch what?" "The bear." Mark scoffed. "It's a toy." Ethan reached for it, turning its head gently. The small green LED blinked once. Alive. Recording. His pulse steadied. A quiet, cold certainty spread through him. Lydia noticed the shift. "Ethan, what are you doing?" He didn't answer. He only said, "Jason's safer than he was an hour ago." Mark folded his arms, pretending boredom. "You're not calling anyone. It's late, and you've got no proof of anything." Ethan's phone was already in his hand. He scrolled, found a hidden app he'd forgotten he'd installed months ago. The feed lit up with thumbnails, timestamps, silent moments. Mark's face appeared in one of them, bending close to the lens, turning it away. He locked the screen and slid the phone into his pocket. "You sure about that?" he said quietly. Mark blinked, uncertain whether it was a bluff. Lydia looked between them, realizing she no longer understood the rules of her own living room. Ethan walked to the hallway doorway and called softly, "Jason, buddy, stay in your room, okay?" A small voice answered yes. Then he faced Mark again. The calm was back, colder this time. "You should sit down," he said. "This conversation's just getting started." Lightning flashed outside, white against the curtains. The rumble followed like a held-back roar, and the coil of cord on the table lay between them, still, waiting. Lightning faded, leaving a soft afterglow across the walls. The lamp hummed, then steadied. Ethan stood over the coil of cord, its dark loop forming a perfect circle on the coffee table, like a quiet threat left behind. Mark sat now, one ankle over his knee, pretending comfort, but his eyes kept darting to the hallway. Lydia hovered near the kitchen threshold, chewing her lower lip until it turned pale. Ethan broke the silence first. "Tell me something, Mark. Why was the camera turned to the wall?" Mark's grin twitched. "Maybe your son did it. Kids play with things." "Jason doesn't touch that bear," Ethan replied. "He thinks it's from his grandma. He never moves it." The air tightened again. Lydia looked between them, uncertain which version to believe. "Camera?" she asked softly. "What camera?" "The one that's been recording this living room since last fall," Ethan said without shifting his eyes from Mark. "For nights when I'm not here." Mark scoffed. "Spying on your family. Real healthy." Ethan ignored him. "I installed it after Jason started coming home quiet. After he said he didn't like being alone when I was gone. I wanted to be sure nothing weird was happening. It was supposed to be peace of mind." His tone had no accusation yet, just explanation. Lydia's voice trembled. "You didn't tell me." "I didn't think I'd need to," he said. "Until tonight." Mark rubbed his hands together. "So what? You think you got a video of me telling him to do push-ups or something? You can't make discipline illegal just because you feel guilty about being gone." Ethan tilted his head. "Interesting choice of word, discipline. You used it earlier too. Seems rehearsed." Mark's jaw twitched again, that same involuntary muscle. It was small but gave him away every time he lied. Ethan saw it now the way an investigator marks a tell. Lydia whispered. "He said you were okay with it, Ethan. That you told him to be firm with Jason while you were away." Ethan turned to her, stunned. "He told you that?" She nodded quickly, tears forming. "I didn't want to believe it, but he showed me a message. Your name at the top, something about keep him in line. It looked real." Ethan's heartbeat kicked once hard. "Show me the message." Lydia hesitated, then pulled her phone from her sweater pocket, scrolling through. She found it, handed it over. Ethan read the words carefully. "Keep him in line. Don't go easy." His stomach sank. The timestamp matched a day he'd been 30,000 feet over the Pacific, no signal, no service. "It's fake," he said, eyes narrowing. "He forged this." Mark leaned back, smirking again. "You can say anything." She saw it come through. Ethan didn't raise his voice. "No," she saw a screenshot. "You never let her open the original thread, did you?" Lydia's expression changed, realization creeping in. "You said your battery was dying that day. You deleted it right after showing me." Mark cut her off, voice sharp now. "Enough. You're both losing it." Ethan took a step forward, lowering his tone. "You're clever. I'll give you that. You knew I travel, that Lydia worries when I'm gone. You made sure there'd be messages that look like me giving permission. But you slipped. The phrasing, I never signed texts, only emails at work." Mark's smirk faltered. "See," Ethan continued, "the truth always leaks out in details." The house seemed to hold its breath. Rain softened outside, becoming a faint drizzle. In that fragile quiet, a sound drifted down the hall, Jason's door opening by an inch. "Dad," came the small voice. Ethan turned, gentler instantly. "It's okay, buddy. Go back in your room. I'll be right there." Jason hesitated. "Can I keep the light on?" "Of course," Ethan said. When the door shut again, Ethan faced Mark. "Whatever story you planned, it's falling apart. You wanted me to snap tonight. You wanted witnesses and a camera pointed the other way. But here's the thing. You never checked the backup." Mark blinked. "Backup?" Ethan let the word hang, then pulled his phone from his pocket. "Cloud upload. Every 30 minutes. From the same bear you turn around." Lydia gasped softly. "You mean?" Ethan nodded once. "There's footage." Mark stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping against tile. "You can't just..." Ethan didn't move. "Sit down." For a heartbeat, they locked eyes, Mark's fury rising, Ethan's calm, unshakable. The imbalance of power shifted. From outside, headlights swept across the window again. A car slowed, then passed. Mark's shoulders eased, as though the light itself reminded him that neighbors existed, that he wasn't invisible. Ethan looked at the coil of cord on the table. "You kept it neat, he said quietly, almost proud of it. Mark's voice wavered. You're twisting everything. No, Ethan said. I'm just uncoiling what you've hidden. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice, loud in the stillness. Lydia sank onto the couch, covering her face. Ethan spoke again, steady and low. This ends tonight. Thunder rolled far away, a deep promise carried on the wind. And for the first time, Mark's confidence cracked. The mask slipped just enough for Ethan to glimpse what lay underneath, panic dressed as defiance. The clock ticked louder now, each second carving a notch into the silence. Mark stayed standing, arms stiff by his sides, as though movement alone might betray him. Lydia sat folded and on herself, the tea she'd poured earlier untouched and cold. Ethan remained between them, shoulders squared, phone in hand, gaze steady. He spoke softly, almost conversationally. You wanted proof of what kind of father I am. Good news, you'll have it soon enough. That camera doesn't lie. Mark's jaw clenched. You think people believe everything on video? You can twist anything with the right angle. Ethan's voice didn't change. You're right. Angles tell stories. You turned that bear to change the story. You knew what you were doing. For a heartbeat, Mark's confidence flickered, replaced by something raw, fear disguised as irritation. He tried to recover. You're losing your mind, man. Lydia, tell him. Tell him we were just trying to keep the kid in line. Lydia's lips trembled. You said he agreed to it. You said he knew. I said what you needed to hear. Mark snapped, the words out before he could stop them. The realization landed like a stone. Lydia looked up, eyes wet, finally understanding what Ethan had seen hours earlier. Ethan studied them both. There it is, he said quietly. The truth's always sloppy when it shows up. He moved to the window, drew the curtain aside, looked at his car still wet in the driveway. Rain had almost stopped now. You planned this carefully, he continued, still facing away. Fake messages, stage behavior reports, a scared kid repeating lines you fed him. Mark's laugh came out too fast. Lines? You're giving me way too much credit. I don't have time to coach a kid. You found time to forge my texts. Prove it. Ethan turned around, the faintest smile cutting through the exhaustion. That's what tonight's for. The tone made Mark flinch. He stepped back half a pace, bumping the table. The cord coil shifted, one loop falling loose like a snake uncoiling. Lydia's voice was small, trembling. Ethan, what are you going to do? End it, he said. Mark raised his chin, defensive bravado coming back. By calling the cops? You drag your own kid through that? They'll hate you for it. Ethan pocketed the phone slowly. Maybe, but he'll be alive to hate me. The words hit harder than shouting could. Mark exhaled through his nose, looking for an escape in words. You think you're the hero? You were never around. I was the one here making dinner, helping with homework, teaching him fear. Ethan interrupted, voice razor sharp now. That's not parenting. That's possession. Lydia stood suddenly, the motion unsteady but full of anger that had nowhere to go. You told me you were helping us, Mark. You said he needed a man's hand. I believed you. Mark's mouth twisted. You still would if he hadn't come home early. That single sentence, so carelessly true, destroyed whatever hold he still had over her. Lydia staggered back as if she'd been struck. Ethan stepped forward, close enough that Mark could smell the rain still on his clothes. You made a mistake tonight, he said quietly. You thought I'd fight you. You needed that, one swing, one shove, to make your story real. Mark sneered. Still could. No, Ethan said, I won't give you that gift. The front of the house glowed suddenly, headlights sweeping across the wall. A car slowed in the street, then stopped. The neighbors. Or maybe a patrol already circling. Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper meant for Lydia. Go to Jason. Keep him in his room. She hesitated only a second before hurrying down the hall, her steps quick, uneven. Now it was just the two of them again. Mark spoke first, voice quieter now, almost pleading under the aggression. You don't understand. He needed to learn to listen. She was losing control of him. I was fixing it. Ethan shook his head slowly. You were fixing control, not a child. Mark's breathing grew shallow, eyes darting to the door. You call the police, you'll ruin her too. You'll make headlines, custody hearings, CPS. Think about your kid seeing that. Ethan studied him. You already did that thinking for me, didn't you? You figured I'd do anything to keep Jason out of court. That's why you kept pushing. But there's one thing you forgot. Control works only when the other person stays silent. Mark's voice cracked. And you're not silent? No, Ethan said. Not anymore. He took out the phone again, tapped the save clip. The small screen glowed between them, showing a grainy image. Mark leaning over, adjusting the teddy bear camera, his own voice clear. If anyone asks, say you fell at school. Mark froze, the lie collapsing. Outside, another flash of light, this time red and blue, washed across the window. Ethan pocketed the phone. That's my proof, he said softly. And your cue. Mark swallowed hard, hands curling into fists he didn't dare raise. The knock on the door came sharp, official. Lydia's voice called from down the hall, half sob, half relief. Ethan, there are police lights outside. Ethan took one breath, steady, purposeful. Good, he said. Let them in. Thunder rolled again, distant but steady, echoing the heartbeat of a house that was finally about to tell the truth. The knock came again, 3 firm raps that made the walls tremble. Mark didn't move. His hands hovered midair, half fists frozen. The sound had drained the last of his confidence. Ethan walked to the door with unhurried steps. Each one seemed to pull the tension tighter, like a rope stretching before it snaps. He opened it. 2 uniformed officers stood on the porch, their raincoats glistening under the fading stormlight. The woman in front had a clipboard tucked beneath her arm. The man beside her carried a flashlight, its beam cutting through the dim entryway. Evening, she said evenly. We got a call about a possible domestic disturbance. Ethan nodded, his voice measured. That was me. Name? Sergeant Ethan Ward. Retired Army, current civilian contractor. Her gaze flicked briefly over his posture, recognizing the calm precision of someone trained to keep composure under fire. Anyone hurt? Ethan stepped aside, gesturing toward the living room. You want to see this? Mark stayed seated but stiffened, his jaw set. This is a misunderstanding, he said quickly. We were just having an argument. The female officer glanced toward Lydia, who had just emerged from the hallway, Jason clinging to her hand. The boy's eyes were wide, face pale. That was enough for her. Ma'am, could you and your son step outside with my partner for a moment? Lydia hesitated. Ethan nodded once. It's okay. Go with them. When they left, the room felt even smaller. The officer remained, flipping open her notebook. Start from the beginning, she said. Ethan took out his phone, thumb hovering over the save video. This will explain faster than I can. He hit play. The screen glowed in the half-light, showing the grainy footage. Mark leaning toward the teddy bear, his voice low but clear. If anyone asks, say you fell at school. Then another clip, Jason flinching as Mark barked an order, Lydia's voice pleading off camera. The officer's face didn't change, but her pen stopped moving. This was recorded when automatic cloud upload. Timestamps 2 days ago. She looked up at Mark. Sir, is that you in the footage? Mark's throat bobbed. It's edited. He's framing me. Then you won't mind if we take a look at your devices. He stood abruptly. You can't just. Actually, we can, she said calmly. Probable cause is right here. Mark's eyes darted toward the front door, measuring distance, timing. Ethan saw it before the thought finished forming. Don't, he warned. Mark froze, then tried another tactic, softening his voice, making it sound reasonable. Look, we were trying to help the kid. He's got behavior issues. Lydia couldn't handle him alone. I stepped in. Maybe I got carried away, but I wasn't hurting him. The officer's reply was cool, steady. You don't get to decide that. She reached for her radio, murmuring a request for backup and a warrant team for electronics. Mark's breathing quickened, every exhale sharper than the last. Ethan stayed silent, watching him unravel. You planned all of this. Mark hissed finally, turning on Ethan. You set me up. Ethan's eyes didn't move. I protected my son. You set yourself up. The officer positioned herself between them. Sir, take a seat. Mark obeyed this time. His shoulders sagged, but his mind still searched for exits, verbal or physical. From the doorway, Jason peeked in, clutching his mother's sleeve. The sight of his father standing still, calm, unshaken, That image would burn deeper than any lecture. The officer finished her report and glanced toward Ethan. We'll need a copy of that file. It's already backed up, Ethan said. I can send a secure link. Mark muttered under his breath. You think this ends me? You think people care? You'll ruin your kid's life dragging this through the system. Ethan finally looked at him, the kind of look that stops air in a room. My son's life starts tonight, he said quietly. You just don't get to be in it. The officer nodded toward her partner returning through the rain. We're taking him in for questioning. If he cooperates, it'll be easier. Mark laughed once, a brittle, hollow sound. You think you're a hero. You're just another guy who can't stand losing control. Ethan didn't answer. He watched as they guided Mark toward the door, read him his rights, and shut the cruiser door with a final, solid click. The sound was small, but absolute, like a lock turning on the past. Lydia stood under the porch light, tears streaking down her face. Jason pressed against her side. She whispered, I didn't know. Ethan joined them, the rain cooling on his jacket. You do now, he said. Behind them, the female officer lingered a moment longer, jotting notes, then met Ethan's eyes. You did the right thing. Calm saved you more than anger would have. He nodded. That's what I was counting on. When the cruisers pulled away, silence crept back. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking clock filled the house. Jason slipped his small hand into his father's, his grip uncertain but real. Ethan knelt down to his level. You're safe now, buddy. That's all that matters. Jason looked up. You're not leaving again, right? Ethan hesitated, the question cutting deeper than anything else tonight. Not for a while, he said finally. We both need a little time. Outside, the storm broke fully, washing the street clean. And for the first time that night, Ethan allowed himself to breathe. The cruisers were gone, their fading sirens leaving only the hollow hum of wet tires on pavement. The rain had eased to a mist, soft against the windows. Inside, silence spread like fog. Thick, cautious, uncertain. The tension that had once electrified every wall now hung heavy, exhausted. Ethan stood in the living room, staring at the empty space where Mark had sat only minutes ago. The coffee table still bore the imprint of his hands, the coil of cord now taken as evidence, but its shadow still visible in the lamp's light. Lydia stood behind him, arms wrapped around herself. Jason had fallen asleep on the couch, head against a pillow, one fist clutching the edge of his blanket like he was afraid it might be taken away. He's really gone? Lydia whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. For tonight. They'll question him. Check his devices. The footage will hold. She exhaled shakily. I can't believe I didn't see it. You couldn't, Ethan said quietly. He didn't want you to. Lydia looked at him, eyes red but clear. He made me think you were part of it. He showed me messages, said you told him to be firm. He even mimicked your voice once. I didn't want to believe him, but it sounded so real. Ethan met her gaze, steady but not cold. He was grooming both of you. Fear works better when it's layered. She nodded, tears falling silently. I thought he cared about Jason. I thought he cared about me. He cared about control, Ethan said. That's all. The clock on the wall clicked to the next minute. The sound felt louder than before. Lydia rubbed her hands together, the motion small, nervous. What happens now? Ethan looked at the hallway where Jason slept. Now we build something that doesn't break so easily. Lydia's lip trembled. You still trust me enough for that? He didn't answer right away. He walked to the kitchen instead, opened the fridge, poured water into a glass, and returned. Trust isn't a switch, he said finally. It's something you rebuild one quiet night at a time. He offered her the glass. Start by drinking this. You're shaking. She took it, hands trembling slightly against the glass. Thank you. Ethan lowered himself into the armchair across from Jason. He studied his son's sleeping face, the way tension still flickered beneath the surface. Tiny frowns, even in rest. He'll need therapy, he said softly. Someone to help him untangle what happened. I'll find someone, Lydia said immediately. You won't have to do it alone, Ethan replied. The word surprised her. She blinked. You're staying? For now, he said, until he stops flinching at sounds. until he laughs again without checking if it's allowed. The rain whispered against the glass, gentle now, rhythmic. Lydia sat beside Jason, brushing hair from his forehead. He told me once he missed the sound of your keys at the door, she said quietly. That's how he used to know everything was okay. Ethan looked down at his keyring on the table, still damp from the rain. The simple jingle of metal felt suddenly sacred. Lydia's voice broke. I wanted to protect him. I thought I was doing that. You were surviving, Ethan said. That's different. They sat in silence for a while, letting the house breathe again. The refrigerator hummed, the pipes sighed, and the wind outside turned gentle, carrying away the remnants of the storm. Then Ethan's phone buzzed, a message from the officer, video verified. Multiple files retrieved from suspect's device. Strong case. Stay reachable. He read it twice, then placed the phone face down. What did they say? Lydia asked. They found more, he said simply. They'll charge him. Lydia pressed her palms to her face, the sound that escaped her half sob, half relief. It's over. Ethan watched the steady rise and fall of Jason's chest. Almost. A faint smile ghosted across his lips, tired, not triumphant. Tomorrow, we start fixing what's left. Lydia looked at him through her tears. I don't deserve another chance. Maybe not, he said honestly. But Jason deserves parents who try anyway. The lamp flickered once and steadied again, warm light spreading through the room. Outside, dawn began to edge along the horizon, a thin silver line cutting through the night. Ethan leaned back, eyes heavy but unblinking, watching the first light catch Jason's face. He'll wake up soon, he murmured. When he does, we tell him the truth, but not the ugly parts. Just enough so he knows the world can be fixed. Lydia nodded, voice small. How do we fix it? One good day at a time, he said. That's how you rebuild trust. That's how you heal. And as the storm clouds drifted away, the house that had been filled with fear began to hum with a different kind of silence. The kind that waits for morning, ready to begin again. Dawn seeped in slow and gray, turning puddles on the street into silver mirrors. Inside the house, the air still held that strange quiet that comes after chaos. A hush that felt borrowed, fragile, as if the walls themselves were trying not to wake what had just fallen asleep. Ethan hadn't closed his eyes all night. He sat at the kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, coffee going cold beside his hand. The mug left faint rings on a stack of papers, old bills, travel itineraries, and one printout from his lawyer, proof of Jason's trust fund. He'd pulled it out sometime around 3 in the morning when the thought hit him again like lightning. How did Mark even know about it? Across the room, Lydia was asleep on the couch, Jason tucked under her arm. They looked peaceful, but it was the peace of exhaustion, not safety. The boy stirred once, murmured something that sounded like a name, then turned deeper into his mother's side. Ethan rubbed his eyes and stared at the paper again. The trust. $50,000, held in escrow from his late mother's estate until Jason's 9th birthday. He'd mentioned it only once, to Lydia, years ago, when they were still figuring out how to co-parent without breaking each other apart. She'd promised to keep it private. She had kept it private. Until Mark. That realization sank in like ice. Ethan stood, crossed the counter, and opened the drawer where Lydia kept her mail. A half-open envelope sat on top of a small pile, return address from the family law office. The flap was torn cleanly, the contents missing. He didn't want to believe it, but the pieces started arranging themselves anyway. Mark had access to this house for months. He'd handled their mail, offered to help with bills, probably snooped through drawers the moment Lydia left the room. Ethan glanced toward the living room. Lydia was stirring now, blinking awake, confusion first, then memory washing in. Is he really gone? She whispered. Ethan nodded. He won't be back, but he left something behind. He held up the empty envelope. Did you open this? Her brows furrowed. No, I never. She stopped, realization dawning. He checked the mail last week. Said it was some boring legal thing. I didn't think. Ethan placed the envelope down gently. He knew about the trust, Lydia. That's why he pushed so hard. He wasn't just controlling you. He was setting up paperwork to take custody. She stared at him, horror rising in her eyes. He said he wanted to help with school forms. I signed some things. Just small things. Oh God, Ethan, what if? He was already moving. Where are they? She stood, shaking now. Top drawer, near the desk. Ethan opened it and found a neat folder labeled Jason's Future. Inside were school forms, health records, and, wedged between them, a notarized letter draft transferring temporary guardianship in case of emergency. Mark's handwriting scrawled Lydia's name in pen at the bottom, and someone else had signed for Ethan. Lydia covered her mouth. That's not my signature. Ethan's throat went dry. It doesn't have to be. If you don't check it fast enough, people assume it's valid. He picked up the document carefully like something poisonous. He had a plan that went further than bruises and fear. He wanted legal control before Jason's birthday. Lydia sank into the chair, whispering through tears. He told me the forms were for a summer program. Ethan folded the document into a plastic sleeve. I'll send this to the officers. It ties everything together. Jason's voice startled them both. Dad, he was standing in the hallway, hair messy, eyes red but awake. Where's Mark? Ethan knelt, his voice gentle but sure. He's gone, buddy. The police took him so no one can hurt you again. Jason looked down, chewing his lip. Is Mom in trouble? Lydia knelt beside him, her hand trembling on his shoulder. No, sweetheart. I made a mistake, but I'm going to fix it. We both are. The boy hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay. Ethan smiled softly. You're braver than most grown-ups I know. Jason's eyes brightened for just a second. Can we have pancakes? Like when you used to come home early? That single line hit Ethan harder than any accusation. Yeah, he said, voice low. We can do that. He moved to the stove, pulling out the old skillet, the one that never sat flat on the burner but still made the best edges. As the batter hit the pan, the faint sizzle filled the kitchen, cutting through the silence that had choked the house all night. Lydia leaned against the counter, watching him, her eyes distant but softening. You really stayed calm through all of it, she said quietly. Ow! Ethan flipped a pancake. The military teaches you something about fear. You can't outrun it, but you can make it sit down and listen. For the first time in months, maybe years, Lydia smiled, small, tired but real. Jason laughed when Ethan nearly dropped the second pancake. That laugh broke the house open in the best way possible, like air after a long dive. Ethan glanced toward the window, where daylight was finally winning against the clouds. We'll talk to the lawyers today, he said. Then therapy, then school. Step by step. Lydia nodded. Step by step. Jason climbed into his chair, syrup ready, eyes on his father. Dad. Yeah, buddy. Jason grinned shyly. You're the protector. Ethan's throat tightened. He managed a smile. Always. Outside, sunlight hit the wet driveway, turning the puddles gold. Inside, the house began to smell like breakfast, like warmth, like something close to normal. But behind Ethan's steady gaze, another truth was forming, one he hadn't shared yet. Because buried beneath the pile of paperwork, under the forged signatures and false promises, he'd seen something else. A single slip of paper with Mark's handwriting still visible. A second name. Someone else had helped him. And Ethan knew this wasn't over yet. The smell of pancakes lingered in the air long after breakfast ended. Jason had retreated to his room, where cartoons filled the silence with cheerful noise, but the grown-ups sat at the table, surrounded by cooling coffee and the quiet weight of paperwork. Ethan's mind wasn't on the dishes or the day ahead. It was on the signature, the second one at the bottom of the fake guardianship letter. The curves of the letters were neat, deliberate, too professional to be Mark's messy handwriting. And beside it, the printed name, Claire D. Haynes, Notary Public. He'd seen that name before. Lydia noticed him staring. What is it? Ethan slid the page toward her. This notary. You know her? Lydia squinted. She works at the title office on Pine Street. I've signed school documents there before. Mark came with me once. Ethan leaned back, mind clicking into place. He used her stamp once legitimately, then forged it later. Lydia's hands began to shake. You think she was involved? He exhaled slowly. I think someone was. You don't get a stamp that clean without access. The realization sank into both of them, quiet but heavy. This wasn't just Mark. There was someone on the outside who'd made his plan possible. Jason's laughter from the living room broke the tension for a moment. Innocent, oblivious, but it only sharpened Ethan's focus. He looked toward the hallway. "I need to make a call," he said. He stepped into the kitchen and dialed Sergeant Ramos, the officer who had handled last night's arrest. The line clicked, and her steady voice came through. "Ward, morning. You holding up?" "Barely," he said, "but I think we got another layer. The guardianship letter. They forged Lydia's signature and mine. The notary's name is real." "That's interesting," Ramos replied, a faint hum of paperwork rustling in the background. "We're running his phone data now. If there's another party, it'll show up in his messages." Ethan hesitated. "If it doesn't, check for scanned PDFs or email drafts sent from shared devices." "Lydia's laptop, maybe. Send me what you've got," Ramos said. "We'll cross-check." When the call ended, Ethan felt the fatigue in his bones, but his mind wouldn't rest. He walked back into the dining room. Lydia was cleaning up, her motions slow, distracted. "They'll look into it," he said. She nodded, then lowered her voice. "Ethan, there's something else. I didn't tell you last night because everything was chaos." He looked up. "Mark got a phone call 3 days ago. Late. I woke up and heard him whispering. He said, 'The papers are ready. She'll sign tomorrow.' I thought it was work, something about his construction clients. But now..." Ethan's stomach tightened. "He said she'll sign?" "Yes." He rubbed a hand over his face. "Then whoever was on the other end knew this plan. Knew it involved you." Lydia's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you think they'll come back?" Ethan's eyes went to the window. The street was quiet, just rain-damp asphalt and the faint hum of distant traffic. But something about the stillness felt staged, like the pause between lightning and thunder. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'm not waiting to find out." He stood, moving through the living room. His eyes scanned every angle, the shelf, the hall, the corners of the ceiling where shadows pooled. He found the teddy bear camera still on the mantel, its tiny lens glinting. He picked it up. "Recording again?" Lydia asked. "Always," he said. "If there's a second person, they'll try to erase what's left. I want them on camera if they do." Lydia sank into a chair, clutching the edge of the table. "I can't live like this. Every sound feels like him coming back." Ethan crouched in front of her. "He won't. But whoever helped him might try to clean up what's left. You and Jason stay inside. I'll check something." Her eyes widened. "Where are you going?" "Pine Street." Lydia grabbed his wrist. "Ethan, don't go alone." "I'm just asking questions," he said gently. "No confrontations." He slipped his phone into his jacket, grabbed his keys, and glanced once more toward Jason's room. The boy was humming to himself, offbeat but happy. That sound hardened Ethan's resolve. When he stepped outside, the morning light had turned gold on the wet pavement. Birds perched on power lines, feathers puffed from the cold. Everything looked calm, too calm. He got into his truck, started the engine, and drove toward town. The tires hissed on damp asphalt, and the world blurred into gray and gold streaks. At the first red light, his phone buzzed. A text from Ramos. "Ward, we found something. Notary name matches 2 other forged documents from separate families. I'll call you in 10. Ethan stared at the screen, heart hammering. 2 other families. The pattern was bigger than him. He looked in the rearview mirror. A silver sedan had turned onto the same street a few blocks back. It stayed a few car lengths behind. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. The light turned green. He drove on, but didn't take the direct route to Pine Street. Instead, he looped through side roads, watching the mirror. The sedan stayed with him. By the time he reached the corner near the notary's office, his pulse was steady, but his mind was already shifting into old instincts. Situational awareness, escape routes, angles. He parked a block away, cut the engine, and waited. The sedan rolled past slowly, its windows tinted dark. Then it turned the corner and vanished. Ethan exhaled. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe not. He got out of the truck and started walking toward the office, his reflection sliding across the glass storefronts. In his pocket, his phone buzzed again, another text from Ramos. "Be careful, Ward. Whoever forged those docs isn't just local. They're part of something bigger." He stopped at the curb, eyes narrowing. The morning didn't feel calm anymore. It felt like the next storm was already building. The small title office on Pine Street looked ordinary. Strip mall beige walls, a flickering neon open sign, and a row of dusty plants that hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. But the ordinariness of it was exactly what unsettled Ethan. Evil rarely announced itself with thunder. It hid behind paperwork and polite smiles. He paused before entering, scanning the parking lot. No sign of the silver sedan. He slid his phone in his pocket, switched on the Bear camera's live feed remotely. Lydia and Jason were safe at home. Then he pushed through the glass door. A bell chimed. Behind the counter sat a woman in her 50s with short hair and reading glasses on a chain. Her name tag confirmed it. Claire D. Haynes. "Morning," she said without looking up. "Need a title transfer or notarization?" "Something like that," Ethan replied. His tone was casual, but inside his pulse beat like a clock. Claire finally looked up. Her eyes were steady, practiced, the kind of calm you develop when you stamp other people's futures for a living. "You're Ethan Ward, aren't you?" The question froze him for half a second. "How do you know my name?" She smiled faintly. "Mark mentioned you once. Said you were his client." "Client," Ethan repeated, voice flat. She gestured toward a seat. "He brought in paperwork a few weeks ago. Something about guardianship forms. Said you were too busy traveling to sign in person." Ethan sat slowly. "You stamped them." Claire adjusted her glasses. "I verified what I was shown. Everything looked proper. Did you actually see me sign?" Her fingers drummed the desk. "Once, twice." He provided identification. Ethan leaned forward. "Fake ID." Her silence was answer enough. "I need to know how many documents he brought in," Ethan said quietly. Her composure cracked for the first time. "3. All similar. Yours, Lydia's, and another from a woman in Lakeside." "Another family," Ethan murmured. "You knew they weren't legitimate, didn't you?" Claire's lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't ask questions when people look desperate. I just stamp." He said it was for a child's schooling. Ethan's jaw tightened. "He lied to you, and now he's in custody for it." Her face drained of color. "Custody? He was arrested last night." The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her shoulders dropped, her voice suddenly small. "Oh God." He said he was helping families. He paid extra for rush work, said no one would get hurt. Ethan stood. People already did. She looked up, guilt pooling in her eyes. "What happens to me?" "That depends on how much you help now." She hesitated, then opened her drawer and pulled out a small black folder. "He left this, said to hold it until Monday." "I didn't open it." Ethan reached for it cautiously, flipping it open. Inside were photocopies of IDs, his, Lydia's, and 2 others he didn't recognize, and a prepaid debit card. "Do you recognize the other names?" he asked. Claire shook her head. "No, but he kept talking about someone named Harper. Said she was handling the cleanup if things went bad." Ethan froze. Harper. The name scraped at his memory until it found its place. Detective Lisa Harper, the family services liaison who'd handled his custody paperwork 3 years ago. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes," Claire said. He said she could make things disappear. The room tilted slightly. If that was true, the problem reached deeper than forged signatures. It reached into the system meant to protect his son. Ethan pocketed the folder. "You'll need to speak with Sergeant Ramos. Tell her everything." "I will," Claire whispered. "I swear I didn't know." He believed her. Fear could make people blind, just like loyalty. Outside, the wind had picked up, pushing thin leaves across the parking lot. Ethan climbed back into his truck, started the engine, and called Ramos. She answered on the second ring. "Ward, I just spoke to the notary." She confirmed 3 forged cases and dropped a new name, Detective Lisa Harper. Silence hummed over the line. Then, "Harper's been on leave for a month," said family emergency. "She's not on leave," Ethan said grimly. "She's in it." Ramos's voice hardened. "Get home. Now. I'll send a unit to your address. If Harper's working cleanup, she'll go after the footage next." Ethan's stomach turned cold. He pressed the accelerator. "Lydia and Jason are inside. Then don't waste a second." The call cut off. Ethan turned onto the main road, tires spitting water from the fading rain. Each mile felt slower, the sky darker, even in daylight. He called Lydia. No answer. Called again, straight to voicemail. "Come on, pick up," he muttered. When he turned onto his street, the first thing he saw was the front door, ajar. The next thing was the faint shimmer of broken glass across the porch. He killed the engine, heart hammering. From inside the house came a sound, soft, mechanical, deliberate. A phone alert. The Bear camera. It had just gone offline. Ethan stepped out of the truck, every nerve alive. "Lydia," he whispered, moving toward the door. The storm that had left the city hours ago had found its way back to this one house. Quiet, waiting, ready to break. The front door hung, slightly crooked, one hinge strained as if someone had forced it and then tried to pull it shut again. Ethan froze on the porch, the world narrowing to the faint ticking of his watch and the slow drag of his own breath. He touched the door lightly, with 2 fingers. The wood was cold, damp with rain, but not slick with fresh water. The break hadn't just happened. Whoever had come inside had been there for a while. He pushed the door open. The living room was dim, curtains half drawn. The lamp that had burned through the night lay on its side, bulb shattered, the faint smell of ozone hanging in the air. A coffee mug had rolled beneath the couch. The silence was so deep that it felt alive. "Lydia?" Ethan's voice was low, almost a whisper. No answer. He stepped inside, eyes scanning corners automatically, old training surfacing without permission. No immediate signs of struggle, just disorder. A chair knocked sideways, Jason's blanket draped halfway to the floor, Lydia's phone face down on a rug, screen cracked. He bent to pick it up. The display flickered once before dying. Then from down the hallway, a faint sound, water running. Ethan moved quietly, each step careful, weight balanced on the balls of his feet. He passed the framed photos, the edge of Jason's school project still taped to the wall. He reached the bathroom door. The faucet was dripping, not running. The sound was rhythmic, steady. He pushed the door open with 2 fingers. Empty. A towel had fallen to the floor. On the counter sat Lydia's purse, open, wallet inside, but keys missing. "Okay," he murmured to himself, forcing his pulse to steady. "Think." He pulled his phone from his pocket and called Lydia again. Straight to voicemail. He switched to the Bear camera feed. The app loaded, then stopped. Device disconnected. He tried the second camera he'd set up near the window before leaving. It still worked. The feed blinked to life, showing a narrow view of the driveway. His truck. The street beyond. No one in sight. Then movement. A figure crossing from the side of the house toward the back. Hooded, quick, confident. Ethan slipped the phone into his pocket and headed for the kitchen. He moved past the dining table, hand brushing the edge of the counter until he found what he needed. The heavy flashlight he'd kept from his field kit. He flicked it on, beams slicing through the gloom. He followed, the faint trail, a wet footprint near the back door, small, maybe Lydia's, and another overlaid on top of it, larger, a man's. The back door was unlocked. It opened into the narrow yard that led toward the alley. A thin mist hung in the air again, as if the storm had turned back to watch. Ethan stepped outside. "Lydia," he called softly. A noise answered from the garage, metal scraping against concrete. He crossed the yard in 3 strides and pulled open the side door. The hinges groaned. Inside, light filtered through the slats of the roof. Lydia was there, hands bound with plastic ties, seated on a stool, a strip of duct tape across her mouth. Her eyes widened at the sight of him. Ethan rushed forward, tearing the tape away gently, cutting the ties with the edge of his multi-tool. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, voice trembling. He wasn't alone. The woman, Harper, she said she was here to collect the footage. I told her you were gone. She didn't believe me. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Where is she now?" "She left 5 minutes ago. Said something about the file being backed up somewhere. She took the laptop and the external drive." Ethan cursed under his breath. "That's the evidence Ramos needs." Lydia gripped his arm. "She said if you came back, to tell you to stop digging. That you don't know who you're dealing with." He met her eyes, steady, firm. "She's right about one thing. I don't. Not yet." He guided her out of the garage and back into the house. Jason's room was still closed, untouched. Relief washed over him. He reached for his phone and called Ramos. It rang twice before connecting. "Ward." She was here. "Harper." She took Lydia's laptop and the external drive. Lydia's safe, Jason's fine. Ramos swore quietly. We just ran her ID through the system. Harper's badge is still active, but her department login was used 30 minutes ago from an unregistered terminal. She's covering tracks, Ethan said. Probably heading somewhere to wipe everything clean. Then don't chase her, Ramos ordered. Let us handle it. Ethan's jaw clenched. If she's got that footage, she can twist the story again. She can make it look like I staged everything. Ethan, listen. He ended the call. Lydia's voice broke through the silence. What are you going to do? Ethan checked the front door lock, then glanced back at her. Finish what I started. He grabbed his jacket from the chair, the flashlight still in his other hand. His movements were methodical, calm, the kind of calm that always came right before he walked into something dangerous. Ethan, Lydia pleaded, stepping closer. Don't go alone. He turned to her, voice soft but resolute. Someone came into my home, threatened my family, and stole the truth. I'm not letting her rewrite it. He brushed her shoulder gently as he passed. Keep Jason safe. If I'm not back in an hour, call Ramos again. The wind caught the door as he stepped outside, slamming it behind him. In the distance, thunder rolled again. Not from the sky this time, but from somewhere closer, deeper, as if the storm he tried to outrun had finally found him. The wind was colder than before, carrying the metallic scent of oncoming rain. Ethan's truck engine hummed beneath him as he cut through the empty streets, eyes darting between the road and the GPS signal pin to his phone. Ramos had once mentioned that every active badge transmitted a low-level tracker for emergency verification. If Harper still carried hers, and she hadn't thought to disable it, Ethan might have a trail. He wasn't supposed to have access, but military habit had taught him how to use the edges of systems. A few keystrokes through an old app he'd built for logistics tracking, and there was a faint pulse heading west, straight toward the industrial zone outside the city. He pressed the accelerator. The roads blurred past, the gray sky bleeding into steel-colored asphalt. As the city fell away, warehouses began to rise, rows of corrugated metal and chain-link fences. The tracker pulsed slower now, pinpointed on an abandoned storage facility once leased by the county years ago. Perfect place to disappear a few files and the people attached to them. Ethan parked 2 blocks away, killed the lights, and listened. The world had gone eerily still again, save for the soft patter of water dripping from gutter seams. He slipped from the truck, jacket collar up, flashlight off. The storage complex loomed ahead, its gate unlocked, one side hanging crooked. He pushed it open silently. Gravel crunched underfoot. Through the thin mist, he saw a car, a black sedan, government plates half covered by dirt. Harper's. A faint glow pulsed from one of the smaller units, the kind used for file archives. He moved closer, keeping low behind the fence line until voices reached him. A woman's, sharp and controlled. I'm deleting everything. Once this is gone, there's no case left. Then another voice, male, unfamiliar. You promised to pay out, Harper. I want it tonight. Ethan stopped cold. There was another one. He edged closer until he could see them through the open unit door. Harper stood by a folding table, laptop open, its blue screen reflecting in her glasses. Her badge hung loosely from her belt, glinting in the dim light. The man beside her, tall, lean, impatient, looked like the kind of ghost you only saw when corruption needed muscle. Ethan drew a slow breath and stepped inside. You want to keep that file open, he said evenly. Harper spun around, hand going for the sidearm on the table. Ethan was faster. He kicked the table edge, sending the laptop skidding. The screen hit the floor with a sharp crack. The man lunged first, but Ethan ducked, the movement fluid, instinctive. His shoulder hit the man's ribs. They both stumbled, the sound echoing off the concrete. Harper grabbed the laptop, clutching it to her chest. Stop, she barked. You don't know what you're walking into. Ethan straightened, breathing hard but steady. You're cleaning up Mark's mess. He called you when things started falling apart. Her eyes flicked to the man gasping beside her. You think this was just Mark? You think he planned all that alone? I don't care who planned it, Ethan said. I just care about the truth. Harper shook her head, desperate now. You think truth matters? The moment I hand over that footage, it'll be buried. You'll be a headline for a week, then forgotten. The system eats its own. Ethan took a step forward. Then I'll build my own system. She laughed once, bitter. You sound like him. Maybe, he said, but I'm not the one who hurts children to get rich. Her hand trembled on the laptop. You don't get it. The files aren't just yours. There are dozens, families like yours. The footage connects every case. Then give it to me. I can't. If I do, they'll come for me too. Ethan's voice softened. You already know they will. She looked at him for a long second, then exhaled and dropped the laptop onto the table. Fine. Take it. But once it's out, you disappear. You never contact me again. He stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on hers. Deal. But before he could reach it, the man she'd brought with her surged upright, swinging a metal pipe from the corner. Ethan dodged, but the blow glanced off his shoulder, sending pain shooting down his arm. He countered instinctively, driving his elbow into the man's stomach. The pipe clattered to the floor. Harper shouted, "Enough!" The noise startled the man. He froze. Harper backed toward the doorway, gripping her badge like it could still protect her. You have what you came for, she said, voice shaking. Leave before this gets worse. Ethan picked up the laptop carefully, ignoring the pain in his arm. The screen had spiderwebbed but still glowed faintly, files still open. He looked at her one last time. You could still make this right. Her jaw tightened. I just did. Then she turned and disappeared into the mist outside. Ethan waited until the sound of her car faded before opening the laptop again. The file directory filled the screen, names, dates, video logs. Dozens of them. His chest tightened. It wasn't just about Jason anymore. It never had been. He closed the lid and stepped back into the rain, the metal sky rumbling overhead. He knew what came next. He'd have to bring all of this to Ramos, trust that at least one corner of the law still worked. He climbed in the truck, laptop on the seat beside him, and started the engine. His shoulder throbbed, but his focus was razor sharp. As he pulled onto the road, the clouds split briefly, a sliver of light cutting through. He glanced at the laptop. The faint reflection of his own face ghosted on the cracked screen. Let's finish this, he murmured. The storm followed him home. By the time Ethan turned into his street again, the rain had stopped, but the world still shimmered with its aftermath. Headlights glistened against the wet asphalt, and his wipers squeaked across the windshield with tired insistence. He slowed in front of the house, relief flooding through him when he saw the porch light on, steady, not broken. Lydia and Jason were safe. He parked, grabbed the cracked laptop from the seat beside him, and sat for a moment, breathing in the silence before stepping back into it. The screen flickered faintly when he lifted it. The files were still there. Every family, every signature, every lie. Inside, Lydia looked up from the couch, Jason asleep against her shoulder again. Her face softened when she saw him. You found it. Ethan nodded. And something more. It's bigger than just Mark or Harper. They've been forging custody transfers, selling them. Maybe families get split up, paperwork disappears. It's organized. Her hand went to her mouth. My God, how many? He looked down at the laptop. Dozens. Maybe more. Lydia exhaled shakily. Ramos. I'm calling her now. He set the laptop on the coffee table and dialed. Ramos picked up almost immediately. Ward, tell me you're home. I am, he said, and I have what you need. Everything. Harper ran a scheme tied to Mark. I've got proof, names, video, transaction logs. There was a pause, then a tone in her voice he hadn't heard before. Cautious awe. You understand what you're sitting on? That's evidence of human trafficking by paperwork. We've suspected it for months, but couldn't pin it. If you're right, this breaks it open. I'm not just right, Ethan said quietly. I'm done running from it. Ramos's voice hardened again, brisk and professional. Stay put. I'm dispatching a secure team. Don't hand that drive to anyone else. Ethan ended the call and sank into the armchair across from Lydia. The weight in his chest felt different now. Not fear, not anger, but something close to clarity. Lydia brushed Jason's hair from his forehead. What happens to Harper? She'll vanish for a while, Ethan said. But once this goes public, she won't have anywhere to hide. Lydia studied him. And you? What happens to you? He gave a tired smile. I start being a father again. Maybe that's enough. They sat in silence. Outside, distant thunder rolled one last time and faded. Then the faint whir of tires approached. 3 vehicles, unmarked but unmistakable. Ethan stood as the knock came. Firm, rhythmic, familiar. Ramos herself stood on the porch, jacket dark with rain, 2 agents flanking her. Ward, she greeted, eyes sharp but warmer than before. You weren't exaggerating. Would have been easier if I was, he said, handing her the laptop. She flipped it open, scanning the folders. We'll take it from here. He nodded, then hesitated. Just make sure the other families know. They deserve to see it end. Ramos met his eyes. You have my word. She signaled to her team. 1 agent sealed the laptop in an evidence case. Another photographed the house for record. Jason stirred on the couch, blinking sleepily at the uniforms. Ramos crouched beside him, her tone softening. Hey there, champ. You helped us more than you know. Jason rubbed his eyes. Did we stop the bad guys? Ethan knelt beside him. We did, he said, and they can't hurt anyone anymore. The boy smiled drowsily and nestled back against his mother. As Ramos and her team left, the sound of car doors shutting echoed like punctuation at the end of a long, painful sentence. Ethan locked the door behind them and leaned his forehead against the wood, finally allowing the tremor in his hands to surface. Lydia came up beside him. It's over, isn't it? He looked at her, weary but certain. Not for the system, but for us, yeah. It's over. She reached out, her fingers brushing his. Thank you for coming home early. He gave a small, tired laugh. Best decision I ever made. For the first time in months, maybe years, the house felt light. Not silent with fear, just quiet with peace. The kind that comes only after every truth has finally been dragged into daylight. Ethan glanced toward Jason, who had drifted back to sleep. The boy's breathing was steady now, no longer shallow, no longer waiting for footsteps in the hallway. Outside, dawn stretched across the clouds, pale gold reflecting in the wet streets. Ethan turned off the last lamp, and the living room glowed with the first light of morning. Sleep, buddy, he whispered. We're home. The storm was gone, but its echo stayed, a reminder that even after the darkest nights, someone still has to open the door and step through.